Hello, welcome to Gemini Star Spiritual Wellness. In today's video, we're going to be talking about the different symptoms of the awakening, spiritual awakening, and ascension process. So, I'm going to be talking a little bit about the experiences that I've had, with this, with the physical symptoms, and also symptoms and rise in consciousness. But everyone's going to be different, right, on what they're experiencing. But I'm going to talk a little bit about the different symptoms now. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a medical doctor. I'm just somebody who's going through a spiritual awakening process. So if you have symptoms, and you please go see a medical professional if you have questions about your health or you're having issues with your health. But I just wanted to share some common symptoms that a lot of people have when they're going through a spiritual awakening process. And also, I just want to mention as I give you information about this, please use your discernment when I talk about, this information over these videos because that's very important. So what's going to happen is if you use your discernment and your intuition, you will understand what resonates with you and what doesn't, and you'll feel it. You'll feel it inside, what resonates with you and what doesn't spiritually. And then if it resonates with you, then you know it's true for you, right? So always make sure when you're doing research into this or you're listening to different videos or getting information, make sure to always check in with yourself and use discernment and use and see what resonates with you. Because some things won't resonate with you and some things will. And I think part of that process is if it doesn't resonate with you, maybe you're just not ready to know that information yet or to apply it because remember, everybody's different on where they are on this journey. So let's get started with physical symptoms. So when I started going through this process, it was kind of a correlation between a rise in consciousness happening at the same time I was having physical symptoms. So the physical symptoms were quite unique. And I've been going through this process for many years, so 10 years. So now I've noticed in the last couple years, I don't have the symptoms like I used to. It used to be much more intense years ago. And I think I've reached a point where my body doesn't need to go through it, go have these symptoms as much as possible because I've been going through it for a while. So I must have reached a point physically where I don't need to have such basically intense symptoms that I used to. So I still feel it, I still have symptoms, but it's not as intense as it used to be. And you might notice that too as you go through this process. Like it might come on very intense, but then as time goes on, it might get, lesser and lesser as far as intensity. So some of the symptoms that I experienced would be and I noticed, and this is kind of unique, I noticed this too with the moon cycles and when we had solar flares coming in. Those really seemed to mess me up that's a good way to put it, for a couple days. And I usually felt this energy from the moon cycles. And when I say moon cycles, I'm meaning like the full moon, and the new moon. And usually I felt it about 3 days before it actually was the full moon, right? I felt it coming in, and kind of the same with the solar flares. I could feel it coming in before it actually hit Earth. And basically, I would notice that I would get kind of jittery. And I don't drink a lot of caffeine. I wouldn't have had caffeine or anything like that in my system, but it's kind of like I had a hard time focusing. And I would basically have to get up at my work and pace around a lot. Like I'd do work for a while, right? And I just couldn't take it anymore. I had to get up and pace and walk around. It's kind of like I felt like I was bouncing off the walls. So that was kind of part of it. And it was bad enough that even my coworkers, would basically be like, yeah, you okay? Because you're struggling today, focusing and being able to get things done. And it just I felt like I had all this energy in me, and I just bounce off the walls. Now, on the opposite end of that, sometimes I would feel very tired. And I guess, I just needed more sleep to integrate these energies that my body was trying to get accustomed to, right? And so there's some days I'd feel very tired and I just couldn't wait to go to sleep at night, or I was just kind of, feeling kind of really lethargic during the day, or, just didn't have much energy and I wanted to sleep a lot. So that was kind of the other end of it. So sometimes I'm bouncing off walls, sometimes I would be really tired. And I notice that happens to me still, maybe not as intense as before, but I definitely still feel that going through now. Sometimes I would get headaches, especially in your third eye chakra up here, and then your crown chakra is getting activated up here. And so basically, I would have headaches here and then down here as well. Just, and some pressure, not always headaches. Sometimes it was just pressure. And, also like a kind of a tingling in my limbs. So, it would be kind of like, I could feel the energy going through me. So it's kind of like I'd have this like it felt like electricity, going through my arms and legs. It was a very strange feeling, and this is all happening together, bouncing off walls, the tingling, sometimes the pressure on my head and so, and it just varied from time to time whether I had all the symptoms at one time or not. Basically aches and pains in my body. So just kind of random aches and pains, just popping up and then they would go away. Inside Out fever. So that one, was interesting. So it felt like I had a fever and I would take my temperature and it would be normal. But inside I felt warm, like from the inside out, I guess is the best way to describe it. And it wouldn't last long, it would last for like a day and then go away. But it was just this weird inside out night. So that's what I started calling it, was inside out fever, because it was just that's what it felt like. You're just warming up from the inside. And every time I took my temperature, it was normal, normal, normal. So it was very strange. And then one thing that that I would get occasionally would be, heart palpitations. And that's like I said, I'm not a medical professional. So if you're having issues of that level, please go see your doctor. If you're having symptoms that continue that, just go see your doctor, make sure you're all right. But I noticed that I would occasionally get heart palpitations, that would just kind of pop up and then they would, go away within a short amount of time. Um, and then also, like, and I still get this now. I still get this now, like ringing in my ears. I get that a lot. And so basically, I noticed that the ringing in the ears comes in a lot right before I get a download of information or something, spiritual happens. It's kind of like, and sometimes it's both ears. Sometimes it's just one ear, more than the other. Sometimes I'll get it on the other ear, sometimes I've had it in both ears. So it's just very odd, as far as how the ringing in the ears goes. Now, just thinking back to what I said in the previous video is, we're changing from the inside out, right? So you're changing, your body's changing through this spiritual awakening ascension process on the molecular level, so on atomic level, right? And so, of course, when you think about that, how that affects your body and the whole DNA upgrades, you're going to have a lot of pretty probably strange physical symptoms because you're changing literally from the inside out, right? So that would explain the inside out fever and the tingling and some of the experiences I was having. So what I've noticed is this went on for many, many years. I was having these symptoms, and then I've noticed that as time went on, it really kind of lessened in intensity. So now I still get symptoms, but not nearly as intense as I did when I first started going through this process, many, many years ago. Also, another thing I've noticed when, as I'm going through these physical symptoms, right? Another thing I noticed was symptoms in consciousness. So basically, what happened was just checking out my notes here, make sure that I remember everything. That basically I like there's this huge increase when I started going through this ascension process, right? This awakening process. There was this huge, jump up in consciousness, as I mentioned before. But with that came different experiences that really started picking up. Now, I started having way more visions than I used to. I started having communication with my spirit team. And sometimes that communication was through visions. Sometimes it was through messages, where I would auditorily hear them, right? Sometimes it was both. Sometimes I would be getting a vision, and then the same time, the vision's happening. Basically, they're kind of like commentary. It would be like watching a movie, and then they're explaining to me what I'm seeing in the movie. Sometimes it was about, I just would hear them auditory. Sometimes I saw my spirit team members, sometimes I didn't. what was interesting is some of the lessons they were teaching me or have been teaching me, because this, this all continues on. This part has not stopped. I continue to have these experiences. But what's interesting is some of the topics that they were teaching me were very deep. So we're talking like energetic level, like about things about energy. So basically quantum physics and that type of level, right? So we're talking really deep scientific level is what they were teaching me. And I feel like, they had to have a lot of, patience with me because some of these concepts is the first time I'm ever hearing them, right? So, I'm sure, I probably, it could be difficult, learning this higher level information that you've never heard before, right? And you're trying to comprehend all of that. So that definitely increased. Definitely dreams, messages coming through in dreams as well. And then different types of synchronicities would happen. So here's an example. So, and this kind of ties in with telepathy. I've noticed an increase in telepathy. So let me give you an example of what I mean when I say synchronicity is telepathy. So I would be thinking about my son, just he'd pop in my head during the day, and I'm like, oh, I wonder how he's doing. I need to talk to him about this. I need to remember to reach out to him later, right, and talk about. And just when I'd be thinking about him, my son would call me or he would text me, and I'd be like, "Oh, that's cool," because I was just thinking about you, right? And then it would sometimes happen, like, I noticed this happening more and more, but I'd be thinking about somebody, work related that I needed to reach out to or schedule a meeting or had, a question, and I'd email them, or they would email me right before I emailed them about whatever the topic was, right? Or they'd call me or they'd walk into my work, and talk to me. So it was kind of like I would think these things and then all of a sudden they're manifesting, right? And they're happening. And that didn't happen before. And I thought that was really unique, right? And so I thought, and I started kind of paying attention to this, like, yeah, that's kind of interesting. Like this is happening, and it's like I'm having these synchronicities all happen and manifesting, and these and having this telepathy. And I've noticed that being able to connect with people's energy. Now, I was always really good at that, right, as a child because of my gifts, but I didn't quite understand like what was going on as a kid, right? I just understood I could read people really well and that I could understand, like on a different level, on a deeper level, I could connect. And basically, I was reading their energy, right, and seeing their energy around them. But I didn't understand what I was looking at or so much as what I was experiencing, back then. But now it's like, I definitely, it's like it's sharpened my intuition when it comes to things just in general, but especially when I'm, working around people and I'm in their energy field. I'm able to pick up, a lot more information, able to connect on that deeper level a lot more than I did as a child. And, that's definitely has increased and gotten better. And also a unique part is messages like I talked in the earlier video about your spirit team. They're always there sending you messages, helping to guide you. And I noticed that in different ways. And I'm going to tell you a unique story about animals because you can have animals that give you messages too. That, they're working with your spirit team because animals have consciousness, right? So they're working with you, and sometimes they're giving us messages as well. So here is a kind of an experience I had, and I'm just going to end on this note as far as talking about this today. But so I was at work, and there was, or by our front door there was a hawk. And the hawks are pretty big animals, right? They're not small little birds; they're pretty big. And he was just hanging out on there by the front door, just sitting there, and I was like, okay, and he's looking in the door at us because we had a door open and we had like a glass, front door. And he's looking in the door at us and just standing there looking at me and just looking at us. And we're like, okay, that's really kind of weird. And he was hanging around my work all day, just kind of hanging around the building. And I thought that was very, very kind of odd, right? So later on that day, I go to leave and I go to my car, and there was a tree right next to my car. And he was hanging out in the tree, kind of like he was waiting for me, is what it felt like. So I come out and he's hanging out on a branch in the tree looking at me. And he didn't leave. He didn't fly away. He wasn't scared of me. He just sat there and looked at me. And I looked at him, and this went on for many, many minutes until I just stood there. We're kind of looking at each other. And then finally, I get in the car and I drive away, and he's still there. And then, where I live, there's a lot of wildlife around my house, and there's, a couple hawks that hang around my house, and right after this happened, I was seeing those hawks around my house. Now, I know it wasn't probably the same hawk, but they were hanging out there a lot more than normal, like around my house and looking at me, watching me. So I definitely was like, okay, there's a message here, right? There's something going on. So then that got me looking into, totem animals and how, animal messages can come through animals and what hawks mean, why was I getting this message? So that's just an example of how messages can come to you through animals. And it was just, quite unique experience. And, it was very, very interesting. But another thing with synchronicity I want to bring up is seeing different numbers. So some people call them angel numbers, but like example would be like 444, 222, or 1010, 1111, 1212. And you can see them anywhere, on the clock. You can see them on license plates. You can see them, just out and about in your daily life. You'll just keep seeing these numbers over and over and over again. So what they are is they are basically downloads coming in for us that connect to us, in our mind, right, in our consciousness. And when we see that number, it's triggering something in us. And it's basically kind of triggering us, and opening the gate to that next level, whatever it is we need to learn, whatever it is we need to experience. So you're on this ascension path, right? And it's a slow process, and it's baby steps through this process. But these codes that you're seeing is unlocking things and giving you messages through the codes, but it's also helping you on this process to unlock information. So that's another way where synchronicity is playing in with, what you're experiencing. So for me personally, the physical symptoms have not been as intense and they've lessened a lot in the last couple years as compared to beginning when I started going through the process. But the consciousness level has increased. So that has not changed. I'm still having all the spiritual level experiences of visions and all that going on, and that continues. But it's just interesting this process and, and how it works. Now, one thing I have learned over the 10 years, and I always believed in this anyway, like I always knew to follow my gut instinct, when I was younger, as a child and as a young adult. But it basically what that is it's your intuition. So your gut instinct is your intuition, right? Trying to guide you. But what I've learned over this process of the spiritual awakening is to listen to my intuition always. Always listen to it because what you're feeling and what you're picking up is very important. So always listen to your intuition. So that's definitely something I've learned over the last, many years I've been going through this process is to always, always follow my intuition. So that's become much more sharper for me. So when I do have these experiences that happen, I understand I'm getting a message. I understand that, I need to look into this or I need to, this is something I need to know and pursue. So it's like now I'm paying attention to these synchronicities and to these things that are going on, and I'm understanding them how they relate to the process that I'm going through. So I'm going to end this video on that note with the physical symptoms and the symptoms of increasing in consciousness as well. So I'm hopefully that this helped you a lot moving forward if you're going through the process yourself. So I will see you soon with a new video. Thank you for joining me today. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. And I look forward to the next time we get together. Thank you. Bye bye.